What is up, freaks? I hope all is well. Happy Friday. It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this week's episode. We got Bitcoin Sign Guy in the studio again. Always a pleasure to have BSG in the studio this time, though. Talking about maybe a controversial topic to some people out there. A lot of people think this project is a shitcoin. I'm not so convinced it's a shitcoin yet. There are a lot of questions about the initial distribution of the address space, but forgetting that, I think the ethos and goals of the Urbit project are extremely fascinating, extremely crucial, more importantly, at this particular junction that we find ourselves in here. I don't know if you guys saw the New York Times article that came out yesterday in the series. I think they're on part 3 of the series by this point already this morning. But it seems that we are not really good at securing our data, and Urbit is a project that is aiming to help secure our data. So I was very interested to sit down with BSG, dive into Urbit, how it works, and how they've been refining their pitch. It's been Urbit's always been a bit of a I'm not gonna lie, confusing project to me. I'm getting less and less confused as time goes on and I learn more about it. BSG seems to think that Urbit is an essential system for Bitcoin in the future if we really want to secure Bitcoin at the individual level. He believes that Urbit is imperative, so we talked about it for about an hour and 50 minutes, I believe. I don't know. I haven't uploaded the audio file yet. I'm recording the ad first. Speaking of the ad, this episode of Tales from the Crypt is brought to you by the Cash App. You freaks already know all about them. They're helping you stack sats, they're helping you send sats, they're helping you receive sats, and now they're helping you stack slivers of stonks if you want to, or slivers of shares. Introducing Cash App Investing. You freaks already know all about them. If you ever have wanted to invest in a stock but have not invested because it's a bit out of your price range, Cash App Investing is now letting you buy slivers of shares. You can buy as little as $1. As little as $1 worth of your favorite stock. On top of that, they still have the Boost program, which is an incredible program that allows you to go to Cash App partner merchants and save. My favorite recently, I like the MTA. They have the MTA Boost here in New York City, and you save $1 on the subway. And again, don't forget you can stack slivers of shares, and because Cash App is directly connected to your bank account, there's no 4 to 5 day waiting periods for inbound transfers, so you can start investing today. Brokerage services are provided by Cash App Investing, a subsidiary of Square and member SIPC. As always, use the code STACKINGSATS. That's one word, STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $10, and $10 is going to go to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. Owls Lacrosse is going to get $10 if you use the code STACKINGSATS. Download the Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today and enjoy this conversation. Enter it with an open mind, I would suggest. Enjoy.
Tales from the Crypt.
Explain Urbit to me or I'll fucking kill you. Don't dumb it down. Don't dumb it down to some vague shit. Explain Urbit to me right now or I'll literally fucking kill you. What the fuck is Arvo? What the fuck are azimuth points? Don't dumb it down or I'll fucking kill you, Bitcoin Sign Guy. What the fuck is Urbit?
What the fuck is Urbit? Explain Urbit to me right fucking now. Urbit is it's a tent, man. What can I say? It's a tent. You bring it out into the wilderness. It unfolds, and then you live in it.
What do we talk about first? Why so many people hate it or why so many people like it?
I think only Matt Odell hates Urbit.
I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of haters on the internet.
Matt Odell, and there's some people like Glenn Weil. They hate Urbit too.
What is Glenn Weil like? Is he like the quadratic voting guy?
I think he's a kook. I'm not sure.
Like Vitalik's big fan of that guy, right?
Probably. That would add up.
Yeah, so if you freaks are to tell, I'm sitting down with Bitcoin Sign Guy again.
It's good to be back, freaks.
It's always good to be back. It's good to have you back at the holidays. We got a nice Christmas tree over here. It smells good.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. How have you been?
I've been well.
What have you been doing?
I have been up to many things, one of which is being the the Bitcoin ambassador at Urbit.
What is the Bitcoin ambassador at Urbit do?
It's to make a loose marriage between Bitcoin and Urbit, since I think that they're two projects that can benefit each other in a lot of ways.
Why the fuck would Bitcoin want to engage in this marriage?
Why would Bitcoin want to engage in this marriage? Well, it's a little scary using Bitcoin. And I say this as someone that is pretty much on the cutting edge of Bitcoin. You sort of have your balls in your throat every time you use a hardware wallet, every time you manage your keys in any regard. It's always a little scary. And so part of this is that we don't really have an entire system that is hospitable to cryptographic assets, if you will. So Urbit is, if just to back up a little bit, Urbit is a computer, a virtual machine that is functionally programmed. It essentially makes it very easy to run a personal server, and essentially makes it very easy to have data security over your digital life.
Yeah, so it's bringing the storage and self-compute dream that a lot of Bitcoiners have had for a while to the fore, it seems. So this is something that's interested me for as long as I've been in Bitcoin, the concept of securing your own data and doing self-compute on your own machines and stuff like that.
Right.
How is Urbit doing this? What the fuck is going on? Explain Urbit to me, dude.
I'll explain Urbit. So to back way up, we have, from the dawn of the personal computing revolution, an idea that the internet would be this agora, a forum where everyone would communicate peer-to-peer, and the computer would be a bicycle for the mind. And so we have this, I won't say utopian view of what the internet could be, but it's certainly an ideal of peer-to-peer networks where you do control your digital life and you compute in a peer-to-peer fashion. And so it was originally thought that it was crazy that you'd even have a personal computer in the home. And then now we're sort of in a place where everyone has a personal computer, but nobody has a personal server in their home. Why? Because the Unix system is incredibly hard to just keep online. It's really hard to keep anything online in a self-hosted fashion, just because there's so many software dependencies, and what you're building on is an amalgamation of 30 years of protocols and layers. So it's all been built up into this Frankenstack, and Urbit essentially just abstracts all that away, gives you a virtual machine that connects to its own network. It has its own infrastructure nodes and root servers for address space. These are sometimes known as galaxies or stars, but they're just, don't let the jargon confuse you. They're just
the jargon sucks.
They're just nodes. They're just infrastructure nodes. And so every end address on the network is a computer, a functionally typed or strictly typed and functional computer that an individual controls with their own networking keys. And so the goal here is to make it very easy for these people who have these computers to use peer-to-peer applications where they determine who gets to receive the content that they're sending without middlemen, without any intermediary that could otherwise abuse you. So right now, for example, Facebook if you want to send a Facebook message to someone, you don't actually send them the Facebook message. You send Facebook the message, and then Facebook sends them the message. So Urbit is something that will let you communicate directly to people and not have to consider a middleman who might then, give you a free service but abuse your privacy, serve you ads. I mean, the internet, we've discussed this before. Like, the internet is an absolute sewer of advertisements and trackers. There were some hilarious memes on Twitter the other day where it was the steps to read an article online. Did you see that?
I did.
It was 9 steps. It's, okay, navigate to webpage, accept the cookies, then turn down
the subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah, the subscribe button, the pop-out ad, all the little pinches and pokes that the internet heaps upon you, because ultimately you don't have the keys at the end of the day to your data on Gmail, on Facebook, on Twitter. You don't have the keys. And so, yeah, the analogy that you could make there is Google. If a lot of our lives are on Google, right? Like Gmail, G Suite. So Google doesn't actually, if you consider that your house, you don't actually have the keys to that house. You have a secret knock that Google assigns to you, and that's your password, right?
Oh, I like that.
So you don't actually, if you wanted to just up and leave, you don't own the house. You don't own the things inside of it. It's all on Google servers. And until you can repatriate that data to a server that you are in full control over, you will probably never have digital sovereignty. And so the parallel with Bitcoin is, we realized it was really, in many ways, Bitcoin has been driving this realization, is that a server is an implement of self-sovereignty. What is running a Bitcoin node? Running a Bitcoin node is running a server that serves the Bitcoin blockchain. And so when you actually own valuable information, as opposed to just querying it and operating on it in a client-only fashion, when it's owned by someone else, it unlocks a greater possibility frontier for I guess human interaction online.
Yeah. So let's get back to why some people hate Urbit. Does Urbit have a blockchain?
Urbit does not have a blockchain. Urbit has, as I said before, an address space, right? So let's talk a little bit about address spaces. We have one address space that most people use today, DNS, right? So websites, there are root servers for the domain name system that currently makes sure that there is only one Facebook.com. That if you type in Twitter.com, you'll always get the website that's run by Jack Dorsey's company, right? So this domain name system, I encourage your listeners, I encourage the freaks to go back and read the history on this one. The current domain name system is basically a Department of Defense project, DARPANet, ARPA. And so you can go deep on that one. But the question is, how do you make a private alternative to the domain name system? How do you get an address space that people want to use and that didn't have such a taint, a tainted genesis? And so Urbit said, okay, we're going to make our own address space, and the goal is to have a few features of the address space. One, you want basically any address to be like nearly as good as any other. So for that reason, Urbit addresses actually mostly sound like quasi gibberish. So for example, my Urbit address is pinned at Timmit, and my friend Logan, he has Takrit Socrypt. So this
I'm a Nizwed Hassler.
there you go. There you go. Who else has a good one? The coolest one is there's an Urbit employee, Joe. He's got Master Morzod, which is
Getting a snow squall warning right now. Excuse me.
Snow squall warning. What are you getting that from the Urbit weather app?
No, it's coming straight from Tim Cook.
Because we have a weather app.
You do?
Yeah.
Pause.
Yeah, we have a weather app, and maybe in the mid-spring we'll have a sundial.
Boss.
These are the cutting edge applications that you can use on Urbit.
Before we get back to the namespace,
yeah.
I have seen like the chat app too. And that looks
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool. Like, all right, so back to the namespace. Why are these names weird? Why am I named Nizwed Hassler?
Sure. So it's basically to make a name that's human readable and human intelligible and memorable, but that doesn't really promote premium address space. Like, we think that premium address space is kind of it misplaces some incentives, like just squatting on premium addresses, which is something that a mutual friend of ours loves to do.
Oh, yes, he does.
Maybe this is why he doesn't like Urbit.
That may actually be the case.
He's like, oh, my primo domain holdings are going to be devalued. But then the other aspect of Urbit address space that I think is really more important is that it's scarce. So with IP addresses, you can have infinite IP addresses. And so all you need to do to spin up a botnet is just, generate a lot of IP addresses. With Urbit, because there's only approximately 4 billion addresses, you deter those types of Sybil attacks where people...
What was that number, 4 billion?
Approximately 4 billion. It's 2 to the 32. So it's like 4 and change, but around there. So the idea there is you want it to be costly to acquire an Urbit address. It doesn't need to be a lot of money. It shouldn't really ever be more than $10 to acquire a networking key, but it should be positive, it should be non-zero and positive, such that people can't just buy up tons of addresses and continue spamming you. Like, the reason why this is important is because actually a lot of the internet services that we currently use paper over the fact that there is, and I'll use the word again, just a complete sewer of content being sent over their system. So Twitter has massive botnets. Google has very sophisticated machine learning algorithms to basically keep the spam that you get sent in your spam folder.
Yeah, and we've been getting nicked on that on the newsletter.
Take a look. I encourage anyone who has Gmail, at least, or whatever your email client is, go to your spam folder and see how much spam you get. And it's basically like you're living in a gypsum palace, where there's a very thin sort of gilded veneer between you and just the pile of shit that exists all around you. And so, yeah, the only reason why our internet experience is even workable is because of those sort of machine learning algorithms, which keep our which filter out spam, very advanced spam filters. But increasingly, the only people that can design really good spam filters are people that have millions or billions of dollars, and so that it further centralizes the power to even provide internet services. So Urbit's alternative is, okay, if you have a scarce address space and it becomes possible to associate reputation with an address because you have a limited number of them, it's costly to burn one by spamming. You can eventually create a system of online reputation that actually addresses the problem of digital reputation rather than just sort of plastering over it.
Yeah, let's try to hone this in and peel back the layers a little bit here. So going back to the address space, in my mind, that's like the big contention with people is like the original distribution of those addresses. Let's talk about the launch of that, and then let's talk the mechanics of how this like all works. Like when you get an address, what does that represent? How do you build a reputation? And then like, are we really trying to build a whole new internet here? Is it possible?
Yes. So, yeah, we definitely are trying to build a whole new internet, but this should have been clear from the moment we started with Bitcoin.
Yes.
So, Bitcoin is, a new.
Well, Urbit's older than Bitcoin, right?
It actually is. Yes. So, Urbit is still. It's an older project and it's a younger project. It's a more wide-ranging project than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a single network protocol, whereas Urbit is, a mathematical definition for a computer, and, then every other, computer protocol that you want to have as well, like a virtual machine, a file system, a networking protocol, etc.
So dissect that phrase you just said, mathematical deterministic computer, or
yes. So when I said earlier that Urbit is a functional computer, if any of you freaks are into CS, you'll know a functional computer is a computer that is defined in terms of a function. So you have some functional programming languages like Rust and Lisp and Haskell. And basically I'll butcher this slightly probably, so don't sue me. But essentially what this means is that the way that a computer updates, its state is in terms of a function where, in calculus, when you can do like, you have f of x and then you have some function and then you have g of x and it's another function. And you can also run like f of g of x. So you can basically have a deterministic outlook on how a computer will interpret a certain, event or piece of data that you pass it. And so this differs from object-oriented programming, which is what, our current computing paradigm is built around, which is more just like doing little, actions on the margin and trying to nudge the state into the direction you want it to go. It's not actually mathematically defined.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So by the way, like a fully functional computer, if you talk to CS folks, like they'll say like it's pretty much the holy grail, or like an idea so crazy it's like so few people have ever attempted it. I think Temple OS is a is a progenitor to Urbit in this regard, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But it's certainly an ambitious project. And then to speak very briefly, there's Urbit has so many ways to discuss and explain. So just very briefly, when I said that Urbit makes running a personal server very easy, the core reason is that because it's a computer that's defined in terms of a pure function, it can actually update itself. It has basically the instructions to itself so that it knows, given like a certain update known as an OTA, an over-the-air update, it can basically keep itself running while it updates itself because it has the instructions on essentially how to do that. And I'm definitely transgressing your command to not dumb it down, but I'll just leave it at that. Because an Urbit computer can update itself, the Urbit developer community can actually update your computer for you and basically perform the tasks that would otherwise need to be performed by like a system administrator. So most large companies or schools, wherever, whenever you have a group of people online, there's usually a system administrator that just works day and night to make sure that content is, continues to be delivered. And at the extreme end, you have things like, the content delivery networks like Cloudflare or YouTube, stuff like that, where all they do is, pour millions upon millions of dollars into, developers who are trained to keep stuff online. Whereas Urbit, it really equalizes that because the computer is functional. It's like, okay, it can run without you needing to know how to administrate it. And so essentially that's what lets it function as your server that is effortless, basically. And that lets you get on to like hosting your own data on peer-to-peer services.
Okay. So now let's jump.
Sorry, we're sort of like jumping ahead, but go ahead.
I was going to say, let's walk through the user experience. Like, well, let's walk through what you walked me through a few weeks ago. Like, what is actually happening? Like, to help people conceptualize. I think actually a walkthrough of how people actually get on using Urbit may help people understand it better.
Sure. So if you've ever, done something like partition your drive and, install a second operating system on your computer, that's sort of what installing Urbit is today. And when you do that today, Urbit runs as a virtual machine on your computer, and then you access it, spins up your server and starts serving your Urbit, and then to access it, you go literally through your web browser and you connect to it that way because it is literally online. Your web browser connects to it through like a local host port.
Yeah.
In the future, we think that it will be in the very near future, and it's honestly shouldn't even call it the future. Like, we're now at a point where the hardware to host things is actually incredibly cheap. So Urbit, having someone host your Urbit for you should be, commodified. And so it should be very easy to securely give someone your networking, give someone the responsibility to keep your Urbit networked. And so that's something that, Talon, the company that's leading development on Urbit, is working on, and several others.
You sound like the trusted third parties are trying to get away from, bro.
It would seem that way, except for the fact that at any time you revoke their access to your computer, and you can pull it down and put it up with anyone else. So imagine if, like, it would never happen.
It's like Bitcoin mining pools.
But if you could, download your entire Google life, and then give it to Microsoft, and they would know exactly what to do with it, and they could set you up all over again. Except, they all have their own content fiefdoms, and it's not in their interest to do that. So that'll never happen. Will never happen. So the way to do it is just make the actual hardware service of like running the server just completely commodified. And then if you are a cypherpunk, as I hope you would be, it won't actually be it's not heavyweight at all. It's very lightweight. And if you want to run it yourself, you could easily get something like the cypherpunk boxes, like the Casa node or the nodal node, something like that, or around that degree of, hardware heft. And you could literally keep it online yourself. Just keep your node in a box plugged in.
Yeah. The decision is there for you to do that if you want it.
Right. So
it's still confusing. I'm still a little confused. I'm always confused with Urbit.
Sure. It's it's
I shouldn't say that. I'm not confused.
It's probably easiest to explain just by telling you the types of things you can do.
Yes.
So Urbit messaging, it's literally peer-to-peer messaging. Your server talks directly to the server of the person that you're sending the message to. Urbit Twitter, which would be like we're developing a micro threads app that will feel, social media-ish. Those Urbit micro, I don't want to call them tweets, don't want to get sued, but those Urbit messages, posts would be
herbs.
The herbs. All right. That's it. We're going with herbs. Your herbs will be.
Yo, did you see what fucking PSG just herb, dude?
Dude. Talking about herbs, man.
Herbs, man. What do you know about that morning ride?
Give me the morning ride. Yeah. The morning herb, dude. So
we're going to be herbing soon.
Your herbs will be delivered to if you want to consume someone else's herbs, their Urbit will be the one to actually deliver those to your Urbit.
What message relay network are those messages being relayed over?
So Urbit has its own transport protocol. It's called AIMS, and it's end-to-end encrypted, and fully peer-to-peer. Though you can actually, so like I said, Urbit is an overlay network where sort of like how the internet was built on the backbone of telephone lines, Urbit basically is using the existing net infrastructure and sort of treating it in a similar fashion. So you can actually use any network protocol that you want ultimately on your Urbit. So if you want to run your Urbit and send stuff over Tor, I mean, that's like sort of like wearing two condoms, but it works in the same way.
Well, no, I would not use that analogy going forward. Using two condoms is a terrible idea because the friction breaks the condom and ruins the whole purpose.
I'm kidding.
Are you going to de-anonymize yourself if you run it through Tor?
Like, just wearing a I'll dial it back. Wearing a belt and suspenders.
There we go. wearing a cummerbund and suspenders is a bad look. Very unnecessary.
No, not a cummerbund. You can wear cummerbund and suspenders, sir.
Oh yeah, excuse me. A belt.
A belt.
Yeah. My bad. I'm sorry, I'm not up to your
You have
stand.
to post your prom pics now.
Oh my god, my prom pics.
Yeah, that's what you get.
I'll have to find them. Shout out Maureen and Christina.
Lovely ladies.
What all right, so I have a planet.
Yeah.
Let's walk.
And once again, you know,
I have a
here
node.
at Urbit, because we're reinventing the internet, we make a lot of jargon to just put ourselves in the mindset that to keep us in that mindset that we've reinvented things. But a planet is synonymous with an Urbit, your Urbit operating system, your particular Urbit instance.
Mm-hmm. So my Urbit instance, when I downloaded it, when I set it up, got my name. It was an unfortunate day for me to set up my Urbit. Apparently, I set up my Urbit the day of the breach.
Yes, that's correct.
But if the breach was not going on, I had to first check in with a dude named Zod.
That's correct. So Zod is a root server on the Urbit network. Its address is 0. It's sort of the first galaxy or root server, if you will. And it's analog to the current internet is like a DNS root server, essentially.
When we last met, I really just had like a huge Merkle tree envision in my head of how this data moves around. So a planet is lower on the totem pole than Zod, which is a star.
Zod is a galaxy, so it goes galaxy, aka root node at the top, and then intermediate step are the infrastructure nodes, which are stars. Think of those as, you know, ISPs. And then at the lowest level, you have individual addresses,
which is
aka planets,
which is what I'm interacting with,
which is what you have. But to get acquainted with the network, you are introduced to other addresses through the root nodes.
Yeah, so Zod is just one root node, right? There's many?
Zod is one of 256 root nodes, and 2 to the 8.
And then, so
I think
each star has a number of planets under it, and then those planets communicate with their stars. Those nodes communicate with the root.
Right. So
the root servers.
So what you're trying to do is find what those servers are meant for is to help you find the IP address of the planet or individual Urbit that you're looking to contact. And so it's designed in that 3-stage tree fashion, because just algorithmically, if you try to, have you ever seen those sorting algorithms where it's like,
will you please change it to nodes, root servers, and whatnot? The plan shit just too confusing. Can we make an official Urbit team?
It's a point well taken. It's a point well taken. See, I've gone through the full arc of this, where when you originally find Urbit, you know, it is too confusing and you don't like the jargon. And then eventually, once you fully get it, it's like, okay, very cool. Like, everything on this system has its own, you know, fun little pet name. But yes, your point is well taken. But so moving back to pure discovery, when you have those, those sorting algorithms, have you ever seen those YouTube videos of, it's like 20 different ways where they're sorting those little color bands, and you see the algorithm moving back and forth and putting things in order. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like you have these algorithms to find things. And so one way you could do it is a planet just starts going through all 4 billion addresses. Like, okay, where is the one I'm looking for? But it's actually much faster if you do it in a tree model, where you go up a level, ask that sponsor if they know where it is. And if they don't know where it is, you ask the root node sponsors, like the highest level. And then you go up the tree and down the tree. So that's simply just meant for efficiency.
Could this be coordinated in meet space too? Like if two people, like if you just told me your name, like why would I have to find you? I have to find you to open up a communications channel.
Right, because for the initial contact, you need to find out what IP address they're under.
Okay.
And so the point of that is just to encounter someone the first time. And then after that, it's peer-to-peer communication. So that's why we have these infrastructure nodes. But then after that, it's really a fully peer-to-peer experience. So you have whatever application you're running, it is literally served from your computer, and it's received on the other side from your friend's computer, and you can do whatever you want, chat, blog back and forth. In the future, we are building, or not in the future, currently we're building the beginnings of payment protocols for Urbit. So you can pay someone in their hosted web store,
so you want
peer-to-peer fashion. And then this is to go fully back. Like, this is where Bitcoin comes back in.
Maybe that's Urbit's first killer app is a block explorer for people who don't want the browsers doxing their addresses.
I mean, absolutely. So when I joked that I was, the Bitcoin ambassador at Urbit, my core insight is really just that a computer, a very sound computer, what do you want to be able to do with it? Well, obviously engage in digital commerce, and then simultaneously a very sound money, deserves a computer like that. And it will be a better user experience to use, at least for your hot wallet, a system like Urbit versus, plugging in a hardware wallet, or, trusting some custodial solution, or just having regular nodes, but having them on a computer that has many dependencies itself.
Yeah. So fascinating. Where does Hoon come into all of this?
Hoon is the language that the Urbit operating system is written in. So it's a functional and strictly typed programming language that you can actually learn to code for free if you want to go to Hoon School. Hoon School is a 6-week course that Talon offers that is actually hosted on Urbit. The classroom is an Urbit chat room, and you basically learn the basics of the language. So for someone like me who had basically zero prior coding experience, I basically didn't have any priors to unlearn. And so I've been doing pretty well with it. Some people who are already, advanced programmers, they will recognize that the syntax is substantially different, and there's a lot to relearn about how a computer defines itself. But eventually, when you can get through that, it's actually orders of magnitude easier to develop applications in Hoon, because it's a functional language. It's just so much more powerful. And then the strictly typed aspect is, you don't have, how other Urbits will interpret the information that you're giving them. So it's much easier for a small team to make something that seems world class. Whereas, literally, I use the YouTube example. YouTube needs thousands of people developing round the clock to just make YouTube work. But on Urbit, you could do it with many orders of magnitude less developer resources.
So Urbit's out to take all of our jobs?
Urbit is out to pretty much blast a hole in the current internet and just completely just take over the world. I mean, I say that glibly, but actually the name Talon, the Talon Corporation, which has been spearheading development on Urbit, is a reference to a Borges novel where there's basically a parallel world that exists basically under the nose of the official world, official culture, and they go unnoticed for so long until one day it's the realization, like, oh my gosh, like this whole parallel internet is all around us. This is very much how I think the world will see Bitcoin. They'll sort of be blindsided by the degree to which it's developed one day. And at that point, it would be sort of too late, too rhizomatic to stop or rupture.
Why is there so much contention between Bitcoin developers that I've spoken to? Just anecdotally, it seems like there's a split between developers. Do you think it's because of the need to relearn a lot of the syntax for the language? Do you think they think there's something structurally wrong with the way Urbit's?
Well, it's I would say,
like, I've had people scold me for even like looking into Urbit.
Right, sure. I think that the objection, there are some objections which are pretty fair, I would say, which is, okay, Urbit is super iconoclastic. It basically throws everything away and starts from scratch. And while Linux may be a bugbear to literally debug and keep online if you're running a server, at least we have pretty good history on figuring out where it fails. We understand that we understand the limitations of the system very well, and it's just been it's had the kinks sort of ironed out of it for many years. So it's Lindy, you could say, whereas Urbit says, okay, yes, that has been the case, but it's still nowhere close to where we need to be, and it will never get there for where we need to be to give people the ability to run their own servers. I think a good tell that Urbit's version of this is correct is that I'm a pretty technically motivated person. I like Bitcoin. I have my own node. Where I can take ownership of my digital life, I do. But literally running an email server, too difficult for me. And it's not just me. Like, Bitcoiners across the spectrum have Gmail accounts. Why is that? If you're like such a big and bad cypherpunk, why are you using Gmail? Why don't you run your own email server? The answer is it's literally just too hard. Even for all that even for as good as we've gotten with Linux and Unix, we're still not good enough to be able to keep these services online for ourselves.
And you also argued that they never will be serviceable for that use case either.
So, sorry, repeat that?
They never will be able to keep our computers online at all times, right?
Probably not without studying system administration.
Yeah.
And so if you accept that, then you basically have no choice but to make a clean slate system that completely starts over and gives itself no limitation on how it can optimize things.
Thank you for speaking to an empty chair there for 15 seconds, but I was listening. So did we really fuck up the internet the first time around that bad? Like, is it that bad?
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, but it's almost like I can tell you this, but you don't have to take it from me. Take it from almost, any Silicon Valley type that understands, computers well, and they'll tell you, yeah, the internet is pretty messed up. I think the word I used before is Frankenstack. It's just an amalgamation of 30 years of code. And it's gotten to a point where none of it was written with, or because we have 30 years worth of code, much of it was written without knowledge of the other parts of it. And we're now at a point where we can actually render it all down, and, boil it down and simplify it tremendously into a much smaller and sleeker package. So Urbit is only 50,000 lines of code. Unix is something like 50 million lines of code.
Holy crap. That was actually a cool story. I believe Logan told it when you guys were on Nick Carter's podcast, On the Brink, about the dude who wrote Unix, did it in like a 2-week span of just like a fever dream or something like that.
Well, to be fair, perhaps all computers are born this way, since, the founder of Urbit, Curtis, also worked on Urbit in a similar fashion. It was basically like his research project for many years. Okay, definitely longer than 2 weeks, but he worked out knock, which is the mathematical rules of that define Urbit, that make Urbit. And so he set those down like pretty much on his own at first. They've been slightly revised, but that's the basic story. Yeah.
And the dude wrote it in like a 2-week fever pitch, but then it's obviously been added to and developed on for the last 3 decades. But it's just interesting to see some man's 2-week, that story that Logan told. It was just fascinating to hear that one man's 2-week sprint can lead to a system that we've built like an entire internet stack
right
on top of.
Sure. Yes. I mean, perhaps this is always the way. I mean, how much premeditation did Satoshi give the Bitcoin code or whatever? But I guess the point I'm making is we're now at a point where we know what we want to do with a personal computer. We have the benefit of retrospect, and we can look and say, okay, people want to have group file sharing. They want to share videos and messages with their friends online. They want to stream some content. They want to, have a text editor, blah, blah, blah. Like we basically know what the personal computer can do and what people want it to do. And now we can basically hone it as a tool and just make it something that is far more slim, and primarily also something that does not abuse you. So because we live as serfs on the cloud servers of Google and Facebook and Apple, basically they make the rules, and many of their services are free. So they have to monetize them by, doing things like selling your data, inundating you with advertisements, etc. And generally just designing their applications to keep you hooked on using their applications, since time is money for these people. The integral of the time that you spend using the app is equal to their profit, usually in most cases, with Twitter, for example. So you don't get the developers that create these applications, they don't design them with respect for the user's time. And so that's why you get things like the little red bubbles that pop up to serve as like a dopamine vending machine to keep you perpetually hooked on using their apps.
Speaking about being respectful of time, do I need to be respectful of yours right now?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We're good. I sent them an email.
Okay. Sorry about that. BSG was here, and I had to hop on a call for my full-time job. Sorry for making you wait.
for the day job.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is my day job.
It's a fun one.
It's a great line of work.
It seems, I mean,
old Marty's in.
It seems like a heavy lift, dude.
Heavy lift.
A very heavy lift. So can I get some network stats on Urbit right now? Like how many people are using it? Can you tell how many people are downloading it?
Around 5,000. That's my estimate. It's definitely rough. But we are now, it's finally really ready to be used with anything that looks like a normal user interface. I mean, we've had a user interface for a little while, but before that it was really just command line. But now in January we're launching OS 1, which is basically it has all of the like first applications of Urbit and in a package that works well together. So this includes the weather app, as I mentioned, but also stuff like chat, blogging. It will have, let's see, what else was there?
Bitcoin node too, right?
No. So the Bitcoin node, that's sort of a parallel project, but it will probably be around for OS 2. Which will have payments, and that's actually just coming a few months later. So yeah, the Bitcoin roadmap for Urbit is develop a Bitcoin node controller, so you can remote control a Bitcoin node from your Urbit using the JSON RPC API. Then we'll have a Bitcoin wallet on Urbit. Urbit has its own key store, by the way. It's called Jail, and think of it like a desktop wallet that's just built into the actual kernel of Urbit.
And that can hold any private key.
Yeah, any
type,
any secret you want.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, love letter to your mistress,
mistress,
or whatever. Whatever secret you want to store in there, it will keep it secure. So yeah, Bitcoin node controller, then Bitcoin wallet, then probably something like an atomic swap so that you can trade Bitcoin directly for an Urbit address. And then, I'm a huge fan of BTC Pay Server, as you guys know. So I'd love to see there be some type of Urbit storefront where you can host a little micro store on Urbit, sell your thing. We're developing, after the Bitcoin node is done, we'll do a Lightning node API. And then the ultimate project is not to just control these nodes remotely, but to see if we can bring them actually into the Urbit kernel themselves. And so have that would be a much larger project, obviously, because you'd have to write a Bitcoin node in Hoon, which is a huge undertaking. So that will be a little while, but that if Urbit works out and everyone's using it, we'll have perhaps people that can take on a task of that magnitude. And then it will be just super happy. You'll have your personal server will also just serve the Bitcoin blockchain. And you can have your financial sovereignty thereof.
Yeah. So how does this differ from Blockstack models? So you describing OS 1 just reminded me of Blockstack and their sort of web page. When you first open it up, it has all the bricks of the docs that you can work on.
Right.
They obviously have a token.
Right. Yeah. So that's one large difference is, yes, Blockstack has a token. Urbit does not have a token. I mean, some people would say, oh, but the address is a token. Not really. I mean, it's a it's an address. This may be shocking to some Bitcoiners, but I personally believe that there are categories of digital property that are not Bitcoin, but that still are valid. Urbit addresses are one of those few. Gasp. But it's not trying to be money is the only thing I could say is, we're not looking to, make it some
that's the thing that
very
confuses. How does
monetized thing.
Well, exactly. So how does Urbit not just turn some secondary market for this address space? Like, there's people trying to bid it up.
Sure. Well, for one, Urbit addresses are non-fungible, so it's more like land, if you will. And then, as Urbit addresses get used, individual addresses will actually gather reputation. So if you bought an address from someone that just used that address to try to scam someone, don't be surprised, if someone doesn't want to connect with you, or if that address got put on some blacklist.
So what happens when you exchange addresses? Like, does the new owner of the address get to see everything the last owner of the address did with it?
No. It's just that
you plug it into the Urbit that's downloaded on your computer, and then you create
yes,
a reputation based on that in your personal computer.
That's probably a question best put to Urbit devs themselves, but I would say my sense would be it's the ID system, the address system is really just a registry of who's currently living at what IP address. And so it's really just like, if you move into a murderer's old house, it's got
a little taint.
It's definitely got a little taint, but it's
stench.
It's still it still
works as a house. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the story there.
It's like, oh, you bought OJ's ID.
Yeah, exactly. But
well, like, and then how? It's like, do you see like Urbit being heavily driven by NIMs? Like,
yeah. So
obviously, all the nobody's going to be able to put their full name in, but like, will people on other in meat space identify themselves? Well, we already have,
mm-hmm.
But will that be common practice, or will it be?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people. This is my personal prediction. I think that some people will have they'll both be NIMs, but one they will freely associate with their name. So if you're a public figure, you'll have you'll run your social media off of one Urbit. But then when you have things that you want to keep private and totally unassociated, it wouldn't be crazy to get a second Urbit that you use for your truly private financial history, that type of thing.
Does the limitation of domain names in the 4 bill range limit the amount of users over time?
So yeah, like I said, there's 4 billion addresses currently, approximately, slightly more, and that's currently there's more Urbit addresses than there are people that even use the internet. But then also many people, so for example, a family could share the same Urbit address, because it's not actually one device per address. It's you can access the same address with thousands of devices. So mom and dad might have an address and give all their kids whatever, smartphones, tablets, and those kids could network under that.
All I'm just thinking is those kids ruining their parents' reputation.
Yeah, well, perhaps Urbit raises some interesting questions about responsible parenting in the digital age. We can leave it at that, but it it's in the future it may be brought up.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Fascinating. What is the world going to be like? You're going to punch a hole in the internet, and then does this bring an end to the hyperreal? I've been wanting to talk to you about the state of the hyperreal.
Well,
today.
Yeah, I think that perhaps there is a somewhat of a state of hyperreality where you have stuff like Google Cloud and look how computery this is, but it's not really a computer that you actually can transplant or own in any real sense. So that would certainly be a hope. Urbit's design, if you've ever seen Urbit running, it's very minimalistic and very much inspired by the CEO of Talon Galen, who was an architect and designer sort of by trade. So it definitely skews a lot of the window dressing of our current online systems. It doesn't try to be a fun house of tricks here and there. It's really just like a basic set of tools.
And what's your ideal adoption scenario looking like? Do you see more people coming and experimenting with it after OS 1? You think there will be a cascade as Bitcoin price rises and people get freaked out that they need to secure their keys on a computer that they have custody of?
Yeah, so it's funny. We actually were talking about this the other day, that we do think that the Bitcoin price is actually one of the inputs for the equation of Urbit success. So we definitely acknowledge that our fate is in some ways linked to Bitcoin itself, because money is perhaps the most precious form of digital sovereignty. It's your digital property. How could you participate in public if you don't have secure property? So this is definitely fundamental to our thinking on what the computing experience should be in the 21st century. But then there are other services as well. The social media ones, the microblogging, having a group desktop. So a secret ambition, or not so secret ambition, of Urbit is to replace basically all productivity suites with just one thing. And Urbit, because it's open source, it's basically very I don't want to use the word malleable, since that has negative connotations like SegWit, but it's
versatile.
It's versatile. It is plastic in the ways you would want it to be plastic, where if you want to make some interesting feature for your company, say you have like something that you want, it should be very easy for you to put an addition on, just like sort of putting an addition on a house or renovating anything.
So you're saying like somebody who wants to develop a complex model, their business cash flow or whatever, and needs to go to Excel and a bunch of different things, can use Urbit in that way?
Basically just any tool you want to build, it should be very just easy to build that on Urbit, for Urbit, and use it in a secure fashion that is owned in a secure way as well.
And Hoon makes that possible, right? You're building all this in Hoon.
Hoon makes that possible. Knock, the definition of Urbit, makes that possible. And then when you take into account the peer-to-peer network of Urbit, it makes it's a thing that's inhospitable to third parties that would try to estrange you from that paradigm.
Yeah.
They're trying to deterritorialize you. Don't let them.
What do you mean by that? Dive in.
Oh, well, that's Deleuze, of course. That's the meme you started.
I
with,
know.
Is you want to keep things in a context that are coherent to you, and instead, we're all, when we start using computers, we're all whisked away into someone else's world, and our digital lives are taken out of context and put into G Suite and put into Slack and put into a myriad of applications. Instead, Urbit, and in each of those applications, they have their own incentives for user behavior, that type of thing. Urbit does not try to program you. You program Urbit.
Oh, run with that line.
I mean,
with that line.
That's literally it. I mean, Urbit, when I say it's like a basic tool, like just raw sort of compute, that's what you would want from a computer that serves you, rather than serving some S&P 500 company which is trying to extract value from you. So
sorry.
A good anecdote is when you go to Amazon.com, you're given hundreds of advertisements for things that companies are trying to sell you based on information that Google sold to Amazon that then sold to those companies, right? Imagine if you so desired, you had an AI that instead of giving away information about your preferences to those companies, what if you told this AI your preferences? What if you said, I like well-made shoes, and your AI, your personal AI, went out and said, yes, master, I have found you the best pair of shoes. And you could say, oh, thank you, Jeeves. And it would be like your personal butler. You know what I mean? But the point is that it works on your behalf, and not the behalf of some mega corporation.
Yeah, it's not the mega corporation going, hey, we know this idiot likes shoes, so we're going to put him in front of him. It's saying, hey, I want some shoes. Put them in front of me, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's not to say that we shouldn't be using computers. It's to say, let computers work for users. Let them also be simple.
I'm a big fan of keep it simple, stupid.
Urbit is definitely the keep it simple, stupid computer.
It may be. The pitch. We got to get it down to keep it simple, stupid. Layers.
This has been workshopped as ad nauseum.
This is workshopping right now.
Let's see, what are the other ones? Like Urbit. It's an actual cloud computer, dude.
That's a funny thing. Like a lot of people hear cloud computing, and most people, unfortunately, honestly believe that a lot of this stuff is stored in space somewhere, but it's actually on the ground in some warehouses on hardware that's run by these corporations.
Yeah, there is hardware that stores all of your emails out there, and so, but the rub is that hardware is actually not that expensive.
Not Hillary's.
The hardware is not that expensive. So why aren't you running your email server? It's just the software.
It's too hard.
It's the software. Urbit is better software.
Simplifying the software.
Better software.
All right.
So yeah, at this point, I want to think, I should probably address something that Bitcoiners, if they've listened up to this point, are probably thinking about, which is, if you know much about the Urbit address space, you know that its registry is currently on Ethereum. So I just want to give my assurances to Bitcoiners that Urbit is in no way wedded specifically to Ethereum. Using it was basically a pragmatic choice for a public key infrastructure, or PKI, in 2016. And it basically accomplished the bare minimum number of operations that were needed to actually coordinate the address space. So in the future, it doesn't have to stay on Ethereum. It can move to a self-hosted model. It could move to like a side chain of Bitcoin if all of the root nodes wanted to federate or something. But the point is that I take the Ethereum, I take the aversion to Ethereum, seriously, because I think that the system does have many flaws.
I agree. Are you guys like susceptible to Ethereum?
If Ethereum went into the lurch, we could basically
went into the lurch?
Into the lurch. Like, if Ethereum starts, if shit starts, pieces start falling off Ethereum, we could
kill switch.
Absolutely take our Urbit address space off of Ethereum.
Like, is this Ice Age affecting Urbit right now? Like, now that
I don't know what the Ice Age is.
Like, Ethereum blocks are coming in slower because those idiots put in a difficulty bomb.
I'm not sure the degree to which that's affected Urbit. I mean, it seems to still be functioning fine, but the bottom line is that there's many ways to host an address registry, right? One of them is as a token on Ethereum. There's many other ways that we could come up with, but the reason why it went that way was basically because Urbit is such an ambitious project already, reinventing so many aspects of, a computer's kernel, that if it was sort of a distraction to say, okay, yeah, let's also solve the Byzantine generals problem. Like, other people were already working on that, coming to, distributed consensus. And so at the time, Ethereum was, an MVP. I think Curtis and Galen were like, yeah, Ethereum is a dumpster fire. I think they literally used that term. And so it's basically like an MVP. And so in the future, when the dust of the blockchain wars settle, I'm sure there will be a good like long-term home for Urbit.
I hope it finds that long-term home. I'm liking my new home as Nizwed.
Nizwed Hassler?
Hassler, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Nizwed Hassler. I still need to connect with Zod. I have not done it since the breach was going on.
Oh, yes. Yes, so the network has been... everything's back up and running. Those breaches, by the way, are just... there will come a day when those breaches no longer happen.
And a breach is basically an upgrade.
Yeah, a breach is basically like a fork where the network just has to go off for a day, but we will literally get to a point where we commit, like, there will never be another breach. Urbit has a Kelvin versioning scheme, so in the future we will have a versioning scheme that counts down. So every time we upgrade Urbit, you shed a version, and it tends towards ossification and sort of extreme conservatism with the way the system is upgraded.
Fascinating. It's fascinating stuff. Are we calling you by your real name now? Have you doxed yourself?
I sort of. I mean, I'll continue to go by Christian.
Okay.
But that's you're
gonna drop Bitcoin sign guy for
For Christian?
For Bitcoin ambassador to Urbit.
Oh,
you're
no.
becoming the Urbit guy. You're not Bitcoin sign guy anymore to some people. You're just the Urbit guy.
Yeah, man, maybe I'm just like a.
Are you killing yourself?
Maybe I'm just a. I can just hear Matt Odell yelling like "sell out." No, I specifically I'll tell you what, like I specifically am interested in Urbit because I am because of my patriotism to Bitcoin. So if you, and this is going all the way back to Tim May and his original blueprint for crypto anarchy. Maybe his email signature that he had, but it basically starts with encryption and then it goes digital money, but then it doesn't stop there. Bitcoin is excellent and it works very well, but it's barely halfway there on the road to crypto anarchy, or just anything that permits alternative non-state cybernetics. So one or two points further down that email signature are digital pseudonyms and reputations being built on top of digital pseudonyms. And so that's what Urbit addresses are, and that's the basis for my interest in the project is like, what will be the best digital pseudonym that we could come up with? It's not going to be website names, obviously, and it's not going to be civic tokens or anything.
What are you talking about,
man? Or anything rent seeking. I don't think it will be Blockstack IDs with their Blockstack token
stacks,
and it won't be. I know that there are people working on other decentralized ID things. I know that there's some people trying to sign in with Lightning, trying to use Bitcoin UTXOs, but I think that the most viable option for decentralized IDs is with a functional computer that's actually exists on a network with a very tight specification. And so this is essentially what I think is crucial. Urbit and Bitcoin can basically marry sound digital money with sound digital reputation, such that you can have markets that have non-state cybernetics. You can have, information feedback about who the bad actors are without using, the system of any apparatus of the state. And so this is what I find most inspiring about Urbit.
I don't think anybody can claim that your intentions aren't pure. No, I agree, man. And it's like I said, like I was fascinated by Blockstack before they had the token. I was always fascinated when Andrew DeSantis was talking about that Dios stuff back in the day. Turned out to be nothing, but Urbit, to me, again, this is a subject I've been fascinated about for like 4 or 5 years now, and it seems like Urbit, to me at least, has the most viable path forward.
Yes.
Or most realistic path forward, I would imagine.
Well, we don't want any freaks to have to take our word for it. So my recommendation and offer actually is we have a surprise for all the freaks. I have a large amount of Urbit addresses, and if you would like, we could give one to every freak basically for free. Let them tinker around with Urbit, kick the tires, free sample, try not buy. So if you guys want to try, I don't know if Marty will go for it. We have plenty of address space to share.
Hey, I'm open to this. If any of you freaks out there are just curious, want to experiment to tell people it's bad, I'm fine with that. Whatever.
Like any feedback is appreciated, especially since we're still very much like ironing the kinks out. So to increasing the users, you provide us with good feedback on how to improve Urbit. You can also get involved directly. I'm managing some people that are creating the Bitcoin capabilities of Urbit now. And so if you want to get in on this and, eventually build something like a peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange on Urbit or, a Bitcoin marketplace, like this is really the time to start connecting all of these crypto anarchic primitives together into a really full-featured system.
A Gordian knot, if you will.
You can cut the knot.
You're a salesman. Was that a bad analogy there? You're
Maybe.
Sailor.
Oh, a sailor, yeah. The Gordian knot, the only way to untie it is to cut it. Perhaps you could say the Gordian knot is, the surveillance apparatuses of the state. The only way to escape them is to just completely sever contact and develop an alternative system of cybernetics to KYC, AML, that will give you that, call it the circular Bitcoin economy, a Bitcoin economy that can be self-sustaining and self-regulating. And so that's the hope, is that with attestations from Urbit addresses to other Urbit addresses regarding previous Bitcoin transactions between Urbit addresses, you can actually develop a sound picture of, who is trustworthy, who do you want to, who would you trust to send, a Bitcoin online for services. And once you can start solving these questions without resorting to, okay, well, we're just going to collect their driver's license and, send the cops after them if they aren't behaving. This puts us much closer to, I guess, the vision of, crypto anarchy, if you will.
No, I agree. And if I have any feedback for you, is that I believe the pitch is getting better.
Thank you.
Believe it or not. I'm hard on you throughout this interview because I want the pitch to be better. Because I agree with you. I think we do need to close the loop of these cypherpunk tools. And I know Urbit gets a lot of shit for being a quote unquote shitcoin. I honestly do not believe Urbit's a shitcoin. I don't understand it fully enough to give it a full blessing.
Dude, your driver's license, definitely a shitcoin. Passport, shitcoin. Car registration, shitcoin. Diploma, shitcoin. Yeah, I know. Everything is a shitcoin.
But I think getting, like, for a message to the freaks out there, especially a lot of you listening might be getting angry because we're talking about Urbit because some people perceive that it's a shitcoin. You can't put blockers on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why I say, it's for you to judge whether this is a valid category of digital property. I personally think it is. I don't think that, I think that we truly do need this type of thing. I wouldn't want to, run a non KYC marketplace without, some system that was robust in this way.
Yeah. Well, fascinating stuff. Thank you for coming by and explaining that to us.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure as always.
Well, we're not done yet here. What's going on outside of Urbit that's interesting you?
Outside of Urbit?
What do you think of the state of the world right now?
Look, it's snowing.
We got that snow squall here.
It got that snow.
Are you worried about the state of the world? Are you optimistic?
Well, let's see. It's impossible to really get off topic because we have the central bank digital currency spec that the ECB came out with. where basically they say they have. Did you see the? It's like the privacy bucks. You get vouchers.
I haven't read it yet.
So the way it works is they have vouchers. You have the central bank, the ECB euro, the digital euro, and it's KYC automatically unless you spend one of your anonymity vouchers on it. So apparently,
What the fuck?
So it's basically like them slipping the mask that like that privacy comes from anywhere but the
Banking system.
the grant of the government. It also is sort of a tacit admission that that there are more laws than can reasonably actually be enforced, which we've sort of known about like over legislation for a long time, but it's sort of a very concrete admission of that. And so this the strictures are getting tighter. Time is of the essence. Hurry up.
It really does feel like it is, though.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately,
increasingly so.
Fortunately, the governments are inept, and it will take them several years before these systems are in place. But even in Bitcoin time, like several years is not long. I think the Bitcoin and Urbit will be definitely much farther along in like 2-3 years, but I mean it's definitely shaping up to be the conflict of a lifetime.
Yeah, like we were talking about what's going down in Virginia right now.
Oh yeah, the boog kicking off.
Well, it's honestly scary. Like so Virginia, in the last elections last month, they went Democrat, and the governor's trying to instill strict gun control laws, specifically against assault rifles, and a bunch of the counties within Virginia, the local sheriff's departments are coming out against the law and saying that they're going to hire deputies. And then the state is countering that with, like, if you don't abide by the law, we'll send the National Guard into your township.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
So, I mean, the only reason the government would want to disarm you after 243 years of you having the right to bear arms is because they intend to do something that you would shoot them for.
They're going to try and take everybody's guns.
They definitely are. So yeah,
is that a bad thing?
Is it a bad thing that they're trying to take our guns?
Yeah, man.
I mean,
guns kill people, bro.
I think I've had it only in like the Marxian terms, like heightening of the contradictions. It's only bad if you don't want to force the issue. I mean, apparently they're gonna fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there might be like, I mean, and I've only read a few articles and seen a couple YouTube videos, but like the thing that scares me the most is the fact that sheriff's departments are coming out and arming deputies within their townships.
Yeah, I mean, wild stuff.
Yeah.
I rewatched the Ken Burns Civil War documentary last night, or it's a multi-part series, but boy, it's sort of feeling like we're at this. Are
there any parallels to the Civil War that we can see today?
I mean, it's to say that today is like 1861 is, it may be a little forced, but it does seem like it's like the 1861 of post politics, where Bitcoiners are basically saying, well, we don't even need your permission to gather here. We're just going to do it. It doesn't even need to be, the secession does not happen anymore by, official channels. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how, because the Second Amendment issues are all enforced along the axes of traditional politics and like, county by county enforcement of gun laws. So it's it's sort of an analog of maybe what's happening in digital systems, but boy, I don't know. It's it might be popping off come this time next year.
Give peace a chance, people.
Give peace a chance. Also,
and don't try to forcibly take stuff from people.
Don't forcibly take stuff, and obviously, be willing to defend what is yours.
That's what I'm most worried about. I don't think there's enough Americans who are ready to defend the ideals.
I think we may. I think that it's hard to say. Has the character of America been suppressed since the Civil War? I mean, it's sort of like have we reached peak NATO, peak centralization?
Oh, I goddamn hope so.
I mean, it would seem that there's only disintegration from here.
Yeah, what was your first quote the first time you came on? Bitcoin has an acidic effect on the state.
To dissolve large nation states and power structures. Yes. I mean, I do believe this. I believe that Urbit does this as well. We didn't really get too far into it, but one of the big points of Urbit is you decide who you network with, and the digital communities that you form are basically entirely voluntary. So nobody can force you to network with anyone else, and nobody can keep you from leaving, a networked relationship. There's a good quote. I think it was Andrea Castillo said the other day, on Twitter and all the social media sites that have been having these free speech debates. The issue that they're debating is not really free speech. It's actually just that when you have one central platform for everyone to use, it's very difficult to impose rules that suit everyone equally. So Urbit basically, it's like we're at the end of a long car trip and the siblings are fighting in the back seat, and we finally pull over at grandma's house and everyone can get out of the car and, go get a breath of fresh air by themselves. And I'm incredibly optimistic about what this could mean for, the future of human relating, whatever type of connections you want to make with people, that you're no longer forced to be in such a tight, confined space.
Yeah, and you were tweeting at Jack to put his open source Twitter developers towards Urbit. He said Jack's looking for Urbit when he came out, and he basically seems like he's identified the problem that you described earlier. It's tough to be the police of everybody on your network, so it seems like he'd rather not do that job.
Absolutely. I mean, Nassim Taleb's point is that local politics is the best form of politics, because when you get down to a local level, that's when you share the most things and you have the most in common with the other people. You share values, you share whatever bonds of community there are, and that makes just I don't want to use the word governing, but it makes just keeping the peace in those types of groups fundamentally easier.
Yeah. Not everybody will be forced to congregate in one central location to scream at each other. They can speak in peace to the people they want to without having other people butt in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christian, it's always a goddamn pleasure. Sorry for using the Lord's name in vain in front of you. It's all right. You got any final notes?
Any final notes?
Final thoughts?
Let's see. Might go see Uncut Gems. It looks like Adam Sandler crushed it.
He might get an Oscar.
Really?
I want to go see that with you. I'm sorry I have to bail.
Okay.
I told you that, didn't I?
No.
Oh, I thought I texted you.
This is Marty flaking on me.
I
in
texted
real
you.
time.
I texted you that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I believe you. Yeah, it looks good though. I am excited to see Adam Sandler flex the full range of his acting ability.
Yeah, he's not Billy Madison in this movie.
Yeah, what else we got? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're 6 days away.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I need to get some gifts.
You better get on that, dude.
I better get on that.
All right, he's gonna go get on that.
Peace and love, freaks. Until next time.